Hello. Okay. Have to talk about today because it was way too exciting. So I'm doing another video. Gosh, I don't know where to put this. Right there. Oh. That seems a little better, right? Kind of move around a little bit. Okay, so today, at the last Penn alumni event, they opened it up to all the Ivy Leagues, and so there was some people from Harvard there at the bonsai event. And so I don't like calling it bonsai. I know it's pronounced, I'm aware it's pronounced bonsai, but I like calling it bonsai. So I'm gonna call it bonsai. At the bonsai event, I met Lisa, and I've been wanting to just start shadowing people and following them around for a day, just to see, people's lives. I'm curious. And so I told her, because she's a clinical researcher, and I said, wait, with clinical trials? And she's like, yeah. And I said, huh? Can I shadow you? Can I get your number or contact? Because I want to, explore this more and learn more about what you've done. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm actually going to Oklahoma City this week and blah, blah, blah. When I get back, I'll contact you. So anyways, set up today. So I went with her, and she thought I was going to be there for a couple hours. I'm like, no, I want to be there from 9 to 4. I want to be there with you the entire day. I literally want to just follow you around and see what you do. And it was so amazing. I mean, amazing. Not in the fact that it was exciting. We actually didn't even talk about clinical. Well, we talked about research and just life and just different things. We just told stories all day, and we spent time on research. And she had to work for a bit, obviously. So I was walking around, and I went and talked to Tiffany, who was her office manager, her site manager, and her story was amazing. Anyways, I spent all day there. Super cool. Absolutely. And I even got a flyer. So just in case because I had a friend that asked if she could get, if she can get a list of studies they have, because she might want to try to do one or something, And I was like, oh, sure, I'll get a list. And so I got her a list. Anywho, I don't know why I put this in. It's terrible. Just struggle sometimes. Okay, let me get the water real quick. Okay. First off, I got to wear my white coat again because she said to bring a white coat. And so I said, okay. I got to wear a white coat again. How awesome is that? That was cool. Oh, and I got Tiffany's business card. This woman is amazing, astounding. We're going to work together in the future. Anywho, Lisa's life story is phenomenal. I don't think she realizes how extraordinary she is. It was so cool. I could not stop picking her brain. It was so cool to hear everything about her last, starting from, no, we went into her childhood. Actually, we talked about a decent amount of her life. The bullet points, but then after the bullet points, we branched into these beautiful fractal patterns all over the place. I digress. I'm clearly very excited. There was a lot that happened today. Anyways, to give you a synopsis, I started my day intending on shadowing her, right? 8 to 4. No, wait, 9 to 4. 9 to 4. 8. Anyways, shadowing her. On the way home, because I was like, oh, maybe I'll eat something, or I don't know what to do. On the way home, I started driving home. I ended up meeting a homeless person, having dinner with a homeless person. That was awesome. Jessica. So I made 3 new friends today. Jessica, Tiffany, and Lisa. Well, I've made friends with Lisa before, but it was so cool. So I arrived there, spend all day. Clinical research is astounding. And I understand now a little bit of background of what's going on, because I don't watch the news. And so the only awareness that I have of anything that's politically related or world event related is through social media. What I just see and people make comments, or I just see buzzwords. You can get a gist. Actually, I'm completely unaware of who these humans are, but I get a gist of how people feel about them based on, whatever the response is. I understand now where this like fear of why research actually has become stagnant and very complex and difficult. And it was astounding. It's like, wow, this is quite remarkable, because in clinical, everything's fear-driven behavior. I've found the root ideology of all our issues. It's fear. Gosh, it's not a lack of love. Love is here, but it's just that fear is more prevalent. Love gets drowned out because love is patient. Love is kind. What is it? Was love is important? I don't remember what it was. But love takes the back seat when anything else wants to explore, because all emotions, all feelings derive off of love. Everything originates off of love. Because of love, because love is so patient and, just very patient, it allowed fear to progress on. Fear gets you very far in life because it motivates you to make action and to move and to try to achieve and accomplish more. And the whole civilization as it stood has been founded on fear. Because we always feared chaos, we feared loss, we feared violence, we fear threats, we fear losing things and bad things happening to us. And so we created structure and order and the justice system and morality and this and that and frameworks. Not recognizing, because at the time we weren't aware that we were building from a place of fear and not love. Fast forward centuries, millennia, whatever it is. I don't know how long humans are around. And you'll see that cognition has advanced so aggressively and rapid. However, the framework of fear has remained in place. And now, the current state of the world, fear can no longer suffice and maintain the thresholds from which human cognition is capable of, which is why things are getting chaotic. And that trickled down. So in the research world, I realized, because this site, they were saying, oh yeah, like the amount of studies, clinical research has actually dramatically, it's a statistically significant result. Statistically obvious result, I would say. And I said, oh, when did that happen? Like, what do you mean? And it's because the office that's in charge of delegating out grant money and stuff like that, they, what's it called? They're like nixing things and this and that, and people are afraid. Companies are afraid, and so they want to wait to see what happens from the turmoil. And it's not even turmoil, because people are unaware that this is what happens when fear takes over. So the changes that Trump is actually doing right now, and that's occurring across the world, they're in preparation for the seed that I'm about to plant. So thank you. Everyone should appreciate and be thankful that Trump is fertilizing the ground so aggressively and so intimately, creating an environment that is 8.1 billion people have a chance to grow. The foundation is the most important part. Trump is aiding in creating a proper foundation. So thank you. Anyways, people, when fear fears itself, it looks like what's going on right now. But anywho, I'm going to try this again and see if we can spit it out in 2 seconds. No, I'm going to try to make it longer. Apparently I like discomfort. See? I like discomfort. Where was I going with this? Oh, anywho, all the studies, all these big companies, big pharma and things, they've halted studies because the person that's in charge in office right now, they're unsure, or whoever's in this office, this is where the name, what's his name? Kennedy. I had no idea who or what it was. I just remember seeing his name places and people saying bad things. I realized all this fear and chaos started because his profession was malpractice dealing with vaccine vaccine complications or post-sequela that occurred after vaccine administration, and he would win stuff for these people. And so people feared automatically he's against vaccinations because that was his job, that was his livelihood. I'm pretty sure in the Bible, right? I just started watching the series Chosen because everyone seems to be so obsessed with it, and it's actually god awful, but whatever. This is what fear makes. Fear makes fear. But how all of the Jews hated Matthew because he was a tax collector. That is how the world perceives Kennedy, because his job was a lawyer, a malpractice lawyer that specialized or focused on vaccine outcomes or bad things that happen with vaccines or whatever. People are unaware that the majority of everyone, actually, if anyone, you can take a room, you can take a whole stadium full of people and say, who honestly goes to their job not out of obligation, but because they enjoy it? Not because they require money. Not because they require something to support themselves. People don't do what they love. They work to afford the things and to do the things that they do love. So, with Kennedy, or whoever is in his office, sure, his profession, he picked something that made a lot of money. How many people make jobs or pick jobs and careers and pursue them because they fear not having enough stability and support for their future? How many people actually pursue their dreams even though they aren't monetarily rewarding? When I was a kid, I actually wanted to be a marine biologist or an archaeologist. And I realized I was fear-driven. Fear drove me to find dentistry, but I thankfully loved it so much that it pained me to leave it. So I was fortunate. Every day I went to work, no matter what it was, I loved it. I loved being in the hospital. I loved everything that's happened to me. I wouldn't change a thing. But people don't understand that about him. And every opportunity that humanity has to display or demonstrate that they understand comes with their responses. And so when you respond in a way that reflects your level of ignorance, it's very obvious. And it's very obvious when discernment is lacking. People can only think to the level of their ignorance or discern to the level of their ignorance and think. But if you remain unaware of where your ignorance is and are unable to perceive your own actions, you will never improve or grow without outside external sources of stimulus, which is what is occurring. People are so scared of change and refuse to move on their own that nature itself has created an environment that fosters it, that forces humanity to look at themselves in the mirror and say, this isn't how I want to live. This isn't who I want to do. This isn't what I want to do with this experience with my life. Okay. I don't know where we're off. Oh, so yeah, the clinic's slow, but this clinic manager, I got her number, Tiffany. Here, I'm gonna put this up here, because this is how great this woman is. She is the first example of what I have come across of a leader. She is a better leader in general than the totality of all military generals and any hero. Why? Because she leads through example. She doesn't just, her actions follow her words. She started out as an EMT, a paramedic, and she is now a site director for a rather prosperous and flourishing site. And it's astounding, her decision-making skills. This woman has been working in this position for over, in this career field. She left EMT, I think 2 decades or something like that. It's been a very long time, and she still maintains her skills so she can do IVs. She can help out with lab draws. She packages up files and mails them out. She does tasks that a leader never does. They delegate it out. She delegates stuff out, but she's also, when her plate, she can handle more and she sees her team is struggling, she has no problems getting in there and doing those things. And actually, it's astounding. It's astounding. And when she was, and I went to her when I first heard her story, because I was introducing people to the office. I went back to her because Lisa had to work a bit, right? Because I was talking to her too much. So I left her a bit to talk to Tiffany, and I heard about her life story, and it's remarkable, astounding, because when she worked at this one place, when it was it was boring and it was slow, she would go watch other people in her work environment because she wanted to learn something. How many people, when they're bored at work, go watch a coworker work and observe them to try to learn more? And she started doing that. And this is how she got into her job here. She started doing that when she was a paramedic. She started just learning things because she was observing everyone, and she just wanted to learn. And so as she pursued learning, her curiosity, she absorbed more, and she was building her skills, her foundation to get to where she is. And so from a 20s, in her 20s, she maintained this curiosity. And she worked for this is what it was. She worked for a different company prior for 13 years. And this woman's astounding. And she was on a meeting one day, and the director of the company said, "Oh, and I want to introduce our new director of operations, this person, as an external, outside hire." And it took her by surprise, because she's like, "Wait a second. Where did this position come from?" Because it wasn't advertised, no one heard of it, and they hired externally. Why? And she said, "This place is a hindrance to my potential, and I need to make a decision. Do I want to stay here in comfort, or do I want to leave because I know, and I don't use the word know often, I know that this place isn't it for me." She made the decision to walk away from a 13-year career to pursue something completely different because she recognized that place did not value her potential. Wow. Nothing about any of her decisions that she ever talked about involved money. None of her decision making involved money. She never mentioned it once. She always mentioned things about this place I wasn't growing here, I got stagnant, this and that, blah, blah. So she left. In places where she could utilize her talents better, and it could be for the greater good. Phenomenal. And you know what? Another example she gave, and another example of a leader, and this reminds me, actually, her behavior reminds me of my friend Rondre. He's still in the military, thank goodness, because the military has a chance. The Air Force has a chance if Rondre stays in. How about that? But Tiffany, she said something. She said her workout, wherever she used to work was like 7, their hours used to be like 7 to 4 or whatever. And they had she had an employee that was consistently late. And so she said, "I recognize life happens. People have kids, things happen." And so we approached her, or this employee, and we're like, "Hey, what can we do to help you? Would 7:30 time work for you? Take a 30-minute lunch instead of an hour, and then you can leave at 4 with everyone else. What can we do to accommodate your schedule better? Do you want to work like a swing, like a different hours? We can accommodate you." That is amazing. Because how many workplaces would be like, "Bro, the entire staff can make it on 7 and you can't. Why are you the only one that can't do this? Figure it out or we're going to let you go," kind of thing. No, this woman said, "You are a valued member of our team and we want to make it work for you. What can we do to help you? How can we adjust to help you?" What? That's amazing. It's just mind blown of how out of the box she thinks. And I told her this, and I said, "You have remarkable skills and thinking and how you perceive and interpret and move through the world. It's remarkable." And she talked about how she had a couple teachers. She named 3 teachers growing up. Her band teacher in like 3rd grade, he was the one that said to her, and she remembered this. He said, if you're on time, you're late. Early is on time. If you're on time, you're late. But if you're going to be late, at least be honest about it. And you're going to be late, or if you're going to arrive actually late, be honest about it. And what that did was essentially tell all these students, these third graders, that, hey guys, there's no reason to lie here. You have nothing to be afraid of. Things happen. And whatever happens, just be honest about it. It's okay. It's okay. And because of how this teacher carried himself, she, and it sounds like the rest of the students, really, she said no one was ever late. And I think that's because he gave them the options and the decisions, being like, what would you prefer? And in that situation, I think the fear-driven behavior of not wanting to disappoint their teacher made them all want to be on time or early. Oh, I'm getting teary-eyed. That's fucking cool. And then in high school, she had another band teacher that she remembered and did something similar like that, and just very creative and allowed people to interpret things and explore curiosity more. They taught, and then in paramedic school or EMT school, she had a teacher that said, that told them, like, hey, there's situations and emergencies where you're unideal. You're gonna have like 3 things available to you and you have to make it work. You're not gonna have the things that you require. And so she learned, she utilized with that teacher, and specifically, she was able to explore different ways of thinking to problem solve instead of linearly following this algorithm. And so that enabled her to just have such a beautiful sense of balance to how she perceives people and interacts with them. And it inspires loyalty and pure, genuine effort from everyone. That clinic, so for instance, for this site, this company, it actually got sold off to a larger corporation, but prior to it, this company was owned by a couple doctors, started by a couple doctors. And from the start of this company, like 20 years, over 20 years, some of the low-level positions that, like the lab assistants or things like that, and admin, they've stayed with the company. This has been their only job for their entire life because that's how good the company treated them. It is a remarkable model of what happens when you trust your employees and you operate from a place not driven by fear. And it's not driven by money or that. It's just by pure curiosity and desire for discovery. Well, it was phenomenal. The place is phenomenal. And the fact that, and it speaks for itself because the employees have stayed there for 20 years. Wow. But as a side note, one of the things we were talking about as we were sitting there, Lisa had a pile of magazines, and JAMA was one of them. And so I was like, oh, can I look at your magazines? I took this one, I asked if I could take it, and she said I could take it. Because what I loved was the humanities section. I have never seen in an academic or any sort of scientific journal have a humanities section. And so I said, well, that's interesting. Poetry and medicine. So I went to it, 279. And this poem, woo, Death Equals One. This poem spoke to me because this poem is like freaking about me. Let's read this. You were a frail silhouette no one noticed, just like this single line in the database. One among thousands, above and below. You have never met, yet you are neighbors. Talking about all the data points, right? Because all these data points. Oh, sorry, let me show this. There's the poem, and then there's another person that publishes like kind of like their thoughts of how they feel and their interpretation of the person's words. And this poem is written by some sort of data analyst, right? Or some sort of research, and every data point equals a life. And this is the poem about it, right? She's saying, you were a frail silhouette no one noticed. A data point, a single data point, just like a single line in the database. One among thousands above and below, you have never met yet you are neighbors, right? On a graph, you have all these points. They represent a life, a human being. The epidemiologist's fingers dance across the keyboard, her eyes fixed on you. And then it's as if she's talking from the perspective of the data point to person. She's saying, no one has ever been so fascinated by my life, as if the data point is speaking that to her. You might have thought, searching for the meaning of illness through a mere string of figures, you would have found it amazing. You were never a math person. No, I was never a math person. I've never been good at math. And yeah, I am a frail silhouette. No, I'm not a frail silhouette. I'm a silhouette that no one notices. No one sees me coming. No one knows what's coming. And the person's remarks, this Krista Roberts, her remarks of Fanny Rancières, she's a PharmD, she's in France. Her remarks were amazing because she says, Death Equals One invites readers to reflect on what makes scientific inquiry so valuable by doing something that it intentionally does not. Humanize a piece of data. The poem depicts a lone epidemiologist as she studies a data point. She fixates on this single line in the database, initially seeing it as a merely helpful information for her research. But as we read, the poetry allows us to learn more about who this data point actually is. Vivid details like never a math person, a frail silhouette, breathe life into a person in our minds beyond a mere string of figures. This person humanized something that's often just seen as a data point. And it's like she recognizes, wow, these little dots on this graph, if you zoom into one, it creates this huge, beautiful pattern because it all represents a single person's life. And I did that today, right? I had data points. Every single person I met today was a data point. But when I zoomed into that data point and explored it, it was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And so that poem made me feel so seen, like kind of like a giggle from the universe being like, yeah, oh yeah, that's that poem. You're a data point that no one sees coming. But anywho, after all that occurred, 4 o'clock rolls around and it's time for me to leave. And there was a bunch of other conversations that we had that I don't even recall see if there's anything else I want to mention from that day. Oh, well, just in general, with the data that is collected from all these studies, one thing that I've noticed is, or I thought about, all these different data, all this data. There is so much plethora of pattern that is unrevealed yet that can be found if someone just literally looked at data. The patterns and occurrences, and you'll see it. It pops out at you. But it's only visible when you have it all written down and all in one. And an example of that is in clinical research studies, if there's any sort of adverse reaction during the study, it's a form. There's forms you have to fill out and all these things, and a bunch of different people review it to determine, hey, is this drug safe or not? And there's this one study, I guess they audit other studies randomly, right? The company assigns other audits to make sure, like a third-party reviewer almost, an independent reviewer. And so this site in specific got assigned a cases or whatever, but then for some reason, this company waited to compile all that data and give it to them at once. And at first, she was like, this sucks, because like we have so many of these to go over. But in doing that, she was so immersed into it and doing it so frequently that she saw patterns emerge, and she spoke about them, like the adverse reactions and things that happened. And it was like clear as day, she could see that this was not a good drug target. You don't want to target this. And it was phenomenal to see, though, like how easily she could perceive this pattern, but the company was unaware of it because it was all just still data. And then they only pull from what they can see and perceive from their perspective. it sounded as if the company wanted to keep going forward with the drug, being like, hey, this is fun, like, you know, this isn't really like, we don't know if these are correlated or I don't know what. But it was really cool to see that, and like and to show and to tell that to Lisa, to be like, yes, so like like this is what it's going on, this and that kind of thing. Or that's cool that you could see those patterns so visibly, and it's easier to see when you have all the data compiled into one place. Now imagine all the clinical, like the clinicalresearch.org or whatever, all that raw data that comes from every study. If you had an AI model that was developed that could run through those algorithms and patterns and find them, you're going to find some very remarkable connections that are unanticipated, and not necessarily about drug interactions, but about how the human anatomy and physiology work. Because energy moves, everything moves. Even though I'm sitting stagnant and this card is stagnant, movement is occurring because electrons and atoms, and at the quantum level, this doesn't sit still. So when those movement patterns are highlighted and scaled out beyond the quantum level, they're still reflecting something going on fundamentally. And so if you take this huge database collecting all sorts of different movement patterns that correlate to the human body, you're going to discover things that you were unaware of before, if you're geared towards it, of looking for perceptions of movement patterns. And how can you do that? You can convert that data into numbers if you want. If you can't perceive letters, convert it to freaking numbers, and you'll see the pattern emerge. Anyways, I digress. So I start going home, because I'm like, you know what, whatever, I'm just gonna go home. I don't really see anything I want to eat. Actually, there was a restaurant called like Bird Dog Pub or something like that. It was nearby, but I saw it, and the number was like their phone number or whatever. I pulled up the page, it was like 444. And for me, when I see 444, it means no. And so I said, okay, I'm not really that hungry, so that's fine. I guess I'll go to the gym. I have time to go home. So I started heading home. But then I was like passing these apartments, and they were kind of like just apartment buildings. But two of the apartment buildings on the side had these huge, beautiful street art, like a muralist came and did it. And I was like, whoa. And so I and I like turned around, because I was like, I want to go see that. And I was just like, this is weird, but whatever. And so I pulled into this, as I pulled into this complex, I noticed it wasn't in a wealthy neighborhood, and the complex was, again, it wasn't a wealthy neighborhood. Let's just put it like that for the complex. But these murals, that's why, and it made the murals even more extraordinary, because they're great pieces of art on this rather run down apartment complex. And so I parked my car, and I saw a woman standing there looking at it, and she didn't have shoes on. And she had a backpack, and she looked a little disheveled, but whatever. But I went up to her, and I was like, and I saw her like looking at it. I was like, hey, I can look at this too. It's so pretty. And she's like, yeah, I see this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wait, wow, have you? And I just sat there and started talking to her more, and I was like, are you an artist? And she's like, no, I'm homeless. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, can you keep talking? And she like explained everything she saw, and just, it was so beautiful to hear her speak just of what she was perceiving. And I was like, wow, I like this. And then there was another mural, so we walked over to the other one, we started talking about it, and a little bit, and she was like, I'm just having a hard time right now, man, blah, blah, blah. I miss my kids. And I was like, hey, you're doing great. And I could tell she was standoffish, right? I just came up to her on the street and was like, hey, I want to hear more. Like, tell me more. Like, I like hearing your perceptions of this. Talk more about it, whatever. And we had great conversations. And she was like, well, I'm going to go. It's hot, blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to keep talking to her because it was very interesting. She's like, oh, I'm going to go sit in the shade. This is freaking hot, blah, blah, blah. My feet are burning. And I said, okay. And she started walking across the street, the highway. I was just like, I want to go talk to her. Maybe she'll want to go out to eat with me. Maybe we can just go hang out a little bit. Whatever. Let me go try. And so I went and got in my car. And as I was going to my car and doing a U-E, there was a sign right there. And it said, the starting of the numbers was 555. 555 for me represents yes. Yes. And so I said, this is when I'm supposed to go to that restaurant now, that pub I found. And so I pulled across the street and found her. I said, hey, like, I'm actually gonna go get a bite to eat, and I just really liked, or I really enjoyed speaking with you. I want to hear more about what you, like, your story. Do you want to go grab a bite to eat somewhere? She was like, yeah, okay. And coincidentally, the place I was going to go to was 450 feet down the street from us. And so I park, and we start to walk in, and it had a patio. So I was like, oh, okay, so like, she didn't have shoes on, so maybe if they didn't serve us, we can sit on the patio. And then she's like, I don't know, man, can you check if they allow you without shoes? Like, I don't know. And I was like, no. And I decided, I was like, you know what, fuck this. No, there's no reason that we shouldn't be served because someone doesn't have shoes on. She has socks. Her definition of a shoe is a sock. She doesn't have bare feet. She has something on her feet. Just because they don't meet your definition of shoes doesn't mean they aren't shoes. So I was like, no, we're fine. We can go in. You have shoes. Yeah, we're fine. That should be no reason. And I said, they want money, right? Any business wants money. So we have money. And so she was a little bit like scared at first, but we went in and I just like, made myself at home. It was definitely a dive bar. It was awesome. It was so awesome. And it was like the perfect place for us, right? Because if we tried going to, I don't know, like Mixedly, for instance, where I was going to try to go, they wouldn't have sat us. Actually, I probably was still able to try that. I'm gonna go with her again. We'll go to Mixedly. And we'll see if Mixedly will serve us. I'll take my friends next time I go there. I'll rent out Mixedly, and I'll take all my philosopher friends that I find in San Antonio. I'm gonna do that. Anywho, we had this we got into the restaurant or the bar easily. We sat down, we had our drinks, we ordered food. I had fish and chips. It was a special tonight, $9.99. So that's why I got it, because it was $9.99. And she got the nachos, and she had two beers. We had the best time talking, sharing stories, and it was so cool to see her personality change and just be like inspired to keep going. And she even said, like, I love learning through experiences. Learning. I love learning. When she was like 11 or 12, she decided to go live with her sister in Georgia, Atlanta, because she wanted to try something new. She wanted to experience something new. And she stayed there till she was 18. She finished school. And then she moved back to Texas. And I was like, you do realize how remarkable it is, right? She's like, what do you mean? And I said, not many 11-year-olds are willing or have the decision or the bravery to be like, I want to try something new. Let me go move somewhere else. I said, you basically moved completely different, across the country. And she's like, no, I was only 4 states away. And I said, no. An 11-year-old leaving a zone and everything familiar to them because they wanted something different, and choosing to just pick up and move. That's extraordinary. Adults don't do that, let alone an 11-year-old pursued it. And it was so cool. So cool that her parents let her do that, or she was capable of doing that. And she did it. And she's been like a little bit in and out of prison kind of thing. Or county. I learned the difference. County. Such a remarkable person. And feels really down on herself and this and that. And I said, and she's interested in, I said, what's your dream job? What do you enjoy? What do you want to learn about? She's like, well, I really just like mechanics, like just kind of tinkering and learning tools and things like that. I just really love those things. And I said, oh my gosh, there are so many auto body shops around here and mechanic shops. I guarantee you, if you showed up and were like, hey man, I just want to shadow, I'm kind of thinking about getting into this, and just hanging out, start sweeping, start handing them things, asking them what they need, familiarize yourself with it, and start asking questions, explore that curiosity, and you will naturally find your way in. I said, you are remarkable. Like I haven't seen you not be able to do anything from what you've demonstrated, and you being homeless right now is a unique adventure that you're on. And she kind of like laughed. And by the end of towards the end of our conversation or whatever, she started calling her life circumstances. She started using different words to talk about what she was going through. That is cool. She stopped calling them stopped having negative connotation words, and she started calling the adventure she was on. And I said, yes, you're on an adventure. You're on an adventure of learning and discovery. And you know, what you're doing right now, living homeless and experiencing this, and what you have already experienced is remarkable and so extraordinary that no one else can write the story of how you perceive it. Because you have done something that most people will never be able to experience or grasp, because you lived it. You didn't just read it in a book, you lived it. And I said, that provides a huge wealth of knowledge and wisdom that cannot be taught in a school. And she even said, she's like, I know a lot of random wisdom. I'm just full of random trivia. And she would say very profound things. And it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And she even told a story about how it was loud in there, so I kind of didn't hear at one point. But I believe she talked about how at one point she was pregnant. She had like a bump and she could feel the baby moving. And then something happened where all of a sudden one day she was not pregnant, or like it just went away. It literally, before her eyes, I think that's what she said, like went away. And no matter who she told, she's like, I could feel it inside me moving. I know when I'm pregnant. I've had children before. I know when I'm pregnant. And then it went away. It just, my stomach went flat kind of thing. And everyone she told was just like, you're fucking crazy, this and that. And I said, no. Just because they don't understand your experience doesn't mean that you're crazy. I said, they can't perceive what reality is capable of and what is possible. So of course they're going to be skeptical of your story, but that doesn't mean that it's not true. Because, right, we've seen this before. Miracles. Thoughts create reality. The placebo effect. How else do you explain, right? When a surgeon, when this placebo effect was first discovered, how powerful the mind is, and healing and dancing with reality. Instantaneous manifestation. So, with these studies of the placebo effect, they used to, not anymore, because, right, medical ethics, they would perform surgeries, heart surgeries, knee surgeries, where they would open up people to examine the placebo effect, and they wouldn't do anything. They would close them back up. Surgeons would literally open up and do nothing to a person and go on their way. And those people showed the same level, sometimes greater amounts of healing and outcomes, better outcomes than the people that received intervention and actual treatment. How else do you explain that? And it's been proven countless of times, over and over and over again. Even at the clinical research, because I asked her about what's the placebo effect, how do you know? Because like they are aware of it, but because they're double-blinded and they don't know, they're unaware. But she was saying how this one woman that previously had another job, she received a placebo for like a diabetic pill, but then also everyone baseline receiving placebo and non-placebo, and baseline was basic classes or basic education items or lessons on diet and exercise, kind of those types of things. The woman on the placebo, mixing up studies. The woman on the placebo for this other drug had so much improvement to all her pain. Like it resolved all her pain or whatever her symptoms were. And when she found out she was on a placebo and then she was still given it, it still worked. And then even after the study ended, or after she made... Yeti, what is that? What did you just bring inside? What was that, sweetheart? What is this? Where did you get this? What did this used to be? Sweetheart, what is this? This used to be some sort of ball. Here you go. Where you brought that in from. Anywho. So I found no reason to disbelieve this woman. If she says she once had a life that was formulating inside her and that was evident, and all of a sudden she experienced something where it completely went away and disappeared without any explanation or reason, I believe her. Why wouldn't I? Why would I not believe her of that when I know the placebo effect exists and I know how reality works? Like, yeah, that's believable. That's very plausible. Like, I have no qualms with agreeing with you. And I told her that. And then she even said, and later on, I think what made her more comfortable is she said, everyone kept saying, like, I need to move past things. I need to get over it. It's been so long, this and that. And I said, and I told her, I said, no, you don't have to move on from anything that you don't want to. Whenever you are ready, you will know. You will be aware of it. And you will naturally do it yourself. Until that time comes, bask in all your pain. Express it. Stay in it as long as you want. Because that's how you move forward. You have 40 years of pain and suffering that you have endured and haven't fully processed. Yes, allow yourself grace. Take as long as you want. Don't listen to anyone. You can spend the rest of your life if you want in this state. That's okay. As long, whatever you choose it fearlessly. And she lives fearlessly. She told a story how she was at a bus stop and she heard the sound ch-ch. And I said, what? And she turned around and she was so angry at this man that tried to threaten her with a gun that she said, go ahead and shoot me. Just do it. Come on. If you're gonna act like that, go ahead and do it. And she just sat there waiting. She's like, all right, fine. I ain't scared. Let's go. Pull the trigger. If you're gonna threaten me like that, pull the trigger. Obviously, the man didn't do it. But that just shows what happens when you meet fear by not showing it. She lives fearlessly because she understands the sacredness of life. When it is not your time to go, it is not your time to go, because she still demonstrates she is trying to put forth effort to access her potential. She is actively demonstrating that she is trying to learn and she is trying to pursue something greater for herself. She just happens to lack direction. She didn't know which way to go. And so that's why we ran into each other. Because she did have a bracelet on saying, like, I love Jesus or something like that. And it was cute. And it was orange, coincidentally. But after that, like towards the end of that, she was like dancing, or not dancing, but like started like sing songs out loud. She has a beautiful voice and just starting to be more comfortable with herself. And it was just so cool. I freaking love hanging out with my philosopher friends. And I need to figure out how to do it and find where they're at in downtown San Antonio so I can go more often. But right now I'm focusing on some other things, but it's not the time right now to do it. But yeah, such a cool day. And so now I'm here, and as soon as I got home, I was like, I need to write a talk about this, because I've started my ministry, if you want to call it a ministry. No, it's not a ministry. I've started my purpose for being created, which is to help translate existence's movement patterns and to make people aware of those different movements and what they're capable of. So it's wild. This day, this life, this opportunity. And it's all because I first started loving myself and just started I still feel fear, but I'm recognizing now how much of my behavior was driven by it. Like, she asked me, for instance, what tattoos do you have? I said, I have this one, like that Bible verse. And she said, do you have any more? I said, actually, I have a big one on my thigh right here, but I can't, and I was like, fuck it, let me show you. And I got up, this is what I did, in the restaurant, in the dive bar. I said, yeah, here, look. Yeah, I got this. And then I pointed to it, I said this and this and this. And I said, yeah. And I even, my underwear was even scrunched up because you're kind of big. And I did that in the restaurant, or in the bar there. Just like that. Because I thought to myself, I said, why wouldn't I show her? I'm not being indecent. Literally doing that, if that's indecency, public indecency, we have bigger issues, because that's not indecent at all. because you can't see anything. People walk around in swimsuits less than that, you know? So it's just like this frivolous, this weird relationship of fear that we have of being afraid to be proud and express ourselves. Sure, does that mean I'm gonna walk around naked in the middle of the street? No, because I don't really desire to do that. There's no reason to do that, except to garner attention. I don't need to prove to myself that I'm unafraid because I do it daily. So, but do I have problems with people doing naked things? No, not at all. It's awesome. So, yeah, it's great just to recognize and start to step away and not step away, but transform my fear-driven behavior and to be more, what's it called? Open-minded. Living fearlessly. Following curiosity. Because when you follow curiosity without the absence of fear, or if your actions are fear-driven versus curiosity-driven, the outcomes are very different. The amount of potential you can access is drastically different. And if you look at the entire world, right, when I say that everyone practices fear-driven behavior, and you see how much wealth and accumulation people have acquired from that fear-driven behavior. So it's very prosperous, but at the same time, the more you mix it with genuine curiosity and awareness and discernment, the more you accumulate. And everyone right now has fallen short of their potential because their wealth has a foundation based of fear. So it will be curious to see what occurs when your foundation for your life and your actions and your thoughts no longer become fear-driven, but become curiosity-driven. To be aware so much that every second of your existence is a dance, a play, an intimate moment, exposure, experience with reality. Oh, it's magnificent. To perceive the movements of space and time with such fluid clarity is remarkable. Nothing is ordinary anymore. It's extraordinary. And I am unsure how else to describe it but to just live it. Because then no one can ever say that their proof is lacking. So, that's what I'm doing. It'll be really interesting when all these videos get released. When I decide to release them, whoever those will be. Huh. Yeah. Okay. I guess I'm done.